Okay, I've got my 2005 Mazda 3i here, and we're going to be replacing these front struts today. And you don't need a lot of tools. One of the things you're going to need if you plan on reusing your springs is some spring compressors like this, and I'll show you how to use that a little bit. This is the way I usually do mine. You're going to definitely save a lot of money usually by reusing the springs versus buying them together. However, if you're not really comfortable with messing with this tool, you can simply just buy them, put together, and it'll go a lot easier that way. But this is the replacement here for the front, and as you can see, it's just put together without the spring. So we're going to go ahead and get started here. And first thing I'm going to do is just get it jacked up, and we'll get a chock behind the wheel and get us some jack stands and make sure everything's safe and secure. Okay, so you can see about where I've got my jack stand there and my jack. There's a flat piece of this body right under here that I like to get a hold of, and so we're just going to go ahead and get this wheel off. And if you got a an air tool or whatever, a pneumatic, it's going to make it a lot easier on you with this process. Okay, and with the wheel off in here, the first thing I'm going to do is work on these clips that are holding this brake line. You can see how it's fastened. You just get a little screwdriver here and kind of work with this, and it should just come right off of there. I'll say it's really a beautiful sunny day today, making it kind of hard for me to see here though, but this clip will just wiggle right out here. A little bit of twisting, and just about got it. Okay, so there's what that is, and remember just to put it the right way up, just like it came off. So it's going to go back on just like that. So, and this, you just push it. So you're just going to push this thing, or pull it rather, sorry, and then it will come. You can sit there and pull this way, it's not going to come out. You have to actually push it down, and then that'll just come out of there. Okay, because that attaches to your strut there. Now, the next thing I'm going to do is go ahead and get these bolts that's holding this caliper bracket, and we're just gonna get this off and secure it somewhere safely, or set it on something, or wire it out of the way. So anyways, we're going to go ahead and remove both of these here. Can't remember the exact size right now, but we're going to go ahead and do that and get this caliper completely off. It's going to be our next step here. Okay, these are 17s. You can use a 6-sided 11/16. So you got one on the upper, lower there. And as you're doing this process, you just have to turn the wheel as you need it, just to make things easier for you. So whatever you have to do, turn the wheel back and forth or whatever, it's just going to make it that much quicker for you. And with those bolts out, this thing will just completely lift off of here. Now, the only exception, if you've got a really bad worn rotor with the lip on it, you may have a little bit of trouble, but you can just press it in a little bit. So I'm going to get this either wired up or set on something where it's safe here and out of the way for now. Okay, and while we've got this turned this way, I'm going to go ahead and take this. It's a 17, or you can use the 6-sided 11/16, what I'm using here. We're going to go ahead and get this out. This is what compresses this that holds the strut. It's not going to fall out of there by no means at this point, but we're going to go ahead and remove this bolt because it's easy to get to, and then we'll move on. Okay, and there's that bolt, and we'll just go ahead and put that aside. So now what I'm going to do, I'm going to go ahead and rotate this steering wheel back around and straighten this back up, and we're going to get on this one right here. Okay, now this is a 14. Now I'm just going to be using my pneumatic there to get it loose. If it starts spinning on you, you'll need to get a wrench, and you'll take a number 5 metric and hold this thing. And this is the way that I'll do it when I go to tighten it back up. But usually the pneumatic will break it loose, no problem. So it's just going to be a little quicker that way. So we're just going to go ahead and get that off there. And depending on, we may have to jack it up or release some tension to get it to pop out of there. We'll see. Okay, so we just got that nut off there. It's under tension. What I'm going to do is, I've got another jack, small jack, we're going to get right under here, and we're just going to lightly start pushing up on this so it'll go come out of there without boogering our threads up there. Okay, so just to show you this spot right here, you just put your jack on there and just barely push up, and you can see it just basically just fell out of there. That's just so we're not messing those threads up because it's under tension as the spring's pushing down on it. Okay, so the next step, we're going to have to work on getting some lubricant around this here, and we're going to also need to get in behind here where you see this piece going in. If we can get a screwdriver or small flat screwdriver or chisel or something, kind of wedge in there, because what you have to do is where it's split there, you can see that piece goes into that split, but if we can push, get pressure, it'll make this release. Otherwise, you know, it's not going to come out of there. It's just it's really clamped down on there from the force of it being bolted and the way that it's made. So we have to get a screwdriver and peck it in there with a hammer or something like a wedge to get this pushed apart so it'll release this here. And I haven't did this in a while. I'm hoping that I can get this without having to remove a whole lot, but I'm thinking that I may have to remove some more stuff. But I'm going to see what I can do with removing as little as I can and wiggling it out of here. Okay, so I want to show you, I've just took a chisel of mine and I've tapped it right back in there. Also turn that wheel back to make it easier to get in here. But I've tapped that down in there, and you can see if you look around that edge there how it's pushing it away. And that's what you're going to have to do. I'm going to spray some lubricant down in here as well. And then hopefully I'm going to be able to wiggle it out of there without too much trouble. And you notice I haven't messed with anything up here. It's also got you know, bolts coming through from the under the hood there, but I haven't messed with any of that. Right now I'm just working on trying to get this out of here because I don't want the spring flying around and everything. So we're going to go ahead and get some WD-40, and I'm going to try tapping on it and see what I can do with this thing. Okay, I went ahead and just slipped that rotor off because it was in my way of tapping this with the hammer, and I've moved it about 1/4 of an inch. Now the lubricant is not just going to make this thing come out of here, it just, you know, helps a little bit, makes it a little bit easier, and occasionally you may have to readjust your wedge. But I'm just tapping on it, and I'm thinking that I can just tap this down far enough that I won't have to mess with removing anything else. I hope, anyway. So we've got it a little ways. We've got it going. You know, another thing about this project, you know, if you're kind of a first timer at this, I would probably give yourself a weekend at least, you know, to do this. So you know, if you run into any trouble or whatever, give yourself plenty of time, a whole weekend if you can. You know, depending on how fast you work, you know, you may get it done really quick, but you know, definitely to be on the safe side, give yourself plenty of time for this project, because you know, even though it's nothing real complicated, but you know, it can be kind of difficult, you know, when things get stuck and don't want to move. So I'm just going to continue on. Like I said, I'm just tapping this here with a rubber mallet. Be careful, don't hit your car like I did once. And I'll follow up here. Okay, just want to show you where I'm at here. All I've been doing is taking my rubber mallet, and this thing is like a 10-pound. It's like shot filled, and I've been hitting it like there and worked it out. Now I did have to adjust my wedge once to get a little bit more slack, but we've got this thing completely loose now, so all I have to do is just wiggle it. There we go. And it's completely off there. So like I said, it's been a while since I've done this. I think it's how I did it last time, but yeah, I just removed this and my brake caliper, so I'm not pulling down on that line and damaging it. So we had to get that off of there. And all this other stuff could stay on, and we'll put this other one back in the same exact way. We're just gonna, but now we're gonna have to go up top. We've got that completely loose, it's fine. We're gonna pop the hood and go up top, and I'll show you. Make sure if you're just replacing the struts like I am, mark where your spring and stuff goes, or make a mental note of how it sits in there, so you're not trying to put it on wrong or anything. I think it really only goes one way, but we'll go ahead and pop the hood. I'll show you the other here. Okay, so we come up here, we got the hood open. We've got some 14s here, and we're just going to go ahead and remove these. You'll also put a mark so you'll know that you don't get anything mixed up. I just put a mark on everything to get everything lined back up where it was. Don't remove this nut. This stays on here. We're just going to get these three right here, these 14s. And once we take them loose, it'll actually drop down and we can remove this whole thing. So I'm just going to go ahead and get those. Like I said, I marked them, and I'll show you from there. With those 3 14s out there, this thing will just fall right down. So we just come back down here and be careful. Don't mash any fingers. And like I said, when I take this out, I like to take and mark everything. Like for instance, this rubber piece here, I'll put a mark on that just to make sure that everything gets lined back up as to how it was sitting, and then just make a note of how this goes on and put it back on the same way. Now what we're going to do now is go ahead, the next step is getting our compression clamps here to compress this this spring, and you actually have to compress this quite a bit. I get a hold of these three, and you don't, it's recommended that you don't use air tools. Don't have the spring facing up towards your face in any way. You know, basically just use common sense and be safe, because the springs are really dangerous if something was to break or come loose, you know. And like I said, you want to do it by hand versus using an air tool, just to be that much more safe. So like I said, I want to get these clamps on here. I'll show you how you set them up, and we'll start compressing this. And once we get this compressed enough, we'll go ahead and remove this nut here. Now you also note that there is a metric place right there to hold that while you break that loose as well. However, it probably would come right off with the pneumatic. So we'll go ahead and get these set up here and I'll show you that. Okay, and look, so we just get these on here and we just set them across from each other. Nothing critical. It's got these little slide pins. You slide them over and that locks it into place on that spring. So it just slides on there and you lock the pin, and then we start tightening on this right here. I did the same thing over there. Just got them set up across from one another like that, and I'm just going to start tightening them by hand. And I won't have to tighten these a whole lot. I mean, just enough to compress it down to where we can get this off easily, and then we'll be able to just transfer it over to the new strut. But it does have to be compressed. Okay, so I've just got a 3/4 here, and you can see about how these are spaced out at this point. Now when I get done, it's going to be about 1 inch of thread you'll see in between these. So we got a little ways to go here. So we're just going to keep tightening this. Like I said, I'm going to do it by hand. It's just not really recommended to do it with the pneumatic, with it not being safe. But you can also see how I've got it setting. This spring is not facing me. If it breaks, it's going to fly that way. And you know, try to keep one hand on it. I'd rather, you know, my hand get damaged than this to fly up into my face. So we're just going to kind of keep something on it while we're tightening with this hand here, just to kind of, like I said, be cautious. So we're just going to continue on here. When I get it snug down where I need it, I'll follow up. Okay, so we've got that. Should be fastened down enough. And we're just going to go ahead and remove that top nut. So I'm going to use a pneumatic. If it spins on you, put your metric Allen wrench in there and use a hand wrench. So I'm going to go ahead and get that off of there. Oh, like I was talking about earlier, put you a mark on this rubber piece here, so you put it back on the spring where it goes. Okay, and now I'm just getting ready to transfer this over to my new strut. So we're going to put everything the same way that it was on this one here. So the spring is going to set right there. You'll notice that the end has got a little pocket to set into, so there's really no confusion on that. The main thing, just to mark, like I said, your rubber piece, so you get that back on here the way that it goes. And this will just slip right on there, and we'll work on getting that nut. Now I'm going to use Loctite and use this old nut because it just seems to be, it's a flared nut. It's made better than the aftermarket, so I'm just going to be reusing this because I like it better. So I'll be putting Loctite. Okay, and with my 17mm and my 6 Allen on here, I've just been tightening this and getting it really tight. The torque calls for 45. However, you need a crowfoot to do that. Sometimes you can get your torque wrench on there after you get it really tight and be able to snug it on down that way, but I'm just getting it really tight this way. And we're going to go ahead and remove the our clamps here for our spring once we get this here snug completely down. Okay, and again, I just wanted to show you how this spring compressor clamp works. It's you can see how far we had to go down, you know, about 3 or 4 inches there. We had to compress it way down to here to get it to where we could get this top nut here on. But like I said, they just, you know, you get them on opposite sides like that. It's got this little pin that just pulls in and out, and that just slides there to help hold it. And then removing it, you just loosen this off a little bit more and then slip it up once that we're done, and that's all there is to it. So it's nothing complicated. And you just loosen it whatever you need to, where you can just slip it right back off there again. So just wanted to kind of go over that. And like I said, it's not, that'll be the most difficult part you have, will be if you're planning on reusing the spring, will be just compressing this, and once you get that, there's really nothing to it. So I'm going to go ahead and get these removed, and we'll work on getting it set back over in the car here next. Okay, and I wanted to point something out. When putting this back in, of course this part of this tower will go down into that slot there. So not only do you have a bolt going through there on this collar and clamping this, but you got this piece right here as well that bolt is going to go through. So even if it come loose, then this little piece of this tab is going to hit on that bolt and prevent it from hopefully, you know, coming out of there, just like as a safety precaution. But once this thing's torqued down, it's not going to move. And we'll be using Loctite on everything. I'm using medium Loctite. So we're just going to go ahead and slip this back up into here, and we'll try to slide it in there. I'm going to need both of my hands. Now, one thing I wanted to mention while I had it on my mind: when your struts go bad, you will know it. This car, they had been bad since I've had it. I just hadn't got around to replacing them yet, and it was really bouncy. I mean, a lot of excessive bounce, going over railroad tracks, whatever, potholes. So they needed to be changed probably about a year ago. I just hadn't got around to it. So definitely, it's not good to put off, because it can do more damage to other things. And while you're in here, it's a good idea to go ahead and inspect some stuff. Like this end link. This is not supposed to be this loose. I mean, yeah, it's working, but you see it's got a busted. So I'm gonna have to go back in and fix these components, and like I said, it's not supposed to be near that loose. So worn shocks will definitely not help the matter. The tie rod is gone. I'm going to have to go back in and replace this. So that's going to be my next project. The bushings up here on the control arm look to be okay. However, the ball joint, I can tell, is not in good shape, and it's really got a lot of movement to it. So it's not supposed to be moving like that. It's supposed to move, but it's not just supposed to be just flopping around everywhere. So lower ball joint, tie rod, this end link, I will definitely have to go back in as a next project and get a hold of those. So anyways, I'm going to need both of my hands, but let's say the first thing, I'm going to set this part up into here, and then we'll get the lower part, and we'll make sure to line our tab up with that slot there, and we'll get this set into place here. Okay, so all I've done is set it up in here loosely, haven't bolted it, and so it's kind of difficult. You got to push this down. You may have to turn your wheel, and I said I could go turn the wheel. It might make it a little easier here, but I've just kind of set it in there, and now I'm going to go about wiggling it on into place. Now, when you do this, I did have this wedge in here. I was wedging it from the bottom into the slot in this collar. Without this wedge, you won't get this thing started. So make sure you get you a wedge in there on the back side of that. Now, once we got it started, it's not a problem. We just got to make sure that this is lined up with the slots. We're not bending it. We push it on down there. You could also have done is to get my wedge started back. Once I got it to this point, I can get a little jack under here and just lightly push up on this carefully, and it'll usually just push it right into place and it doesn't hurt a thing. But I think I'm going to go and turn my wheel. I may just leave it right there. I think it's fine. But I'm going to go ahead and I think I'm going to get my jack under here. I'm just going to lightly start pushing up and watch this tab here since I got it to this point. Like I say, it's set up in here. It's not into place. That way I can move this whole strut around to wiggle it into place, because it's kind of difficult. You got to push this down to be able to get it started, and make sure you have the wedge so you can split that where it'll slide in there and get started. And if you have to, if you still can't get it, go ahead and take your tie rod off, free up some more room. And with that, you should not have a problem. Like I said, the control arm is kind of, you know, holding things a little bit and making it want to pop back up, so it makes it a little bit more difficult, but you can work it in there. Okay, so once we've got it fully seated there, you'll know it, that it'll set completely down there, and the little slot in there where the bolt goes through will be where it's supposed to be. And I just would point out, now sometimes things don't go according to plan. You can get this tower cocked in there and you may have a little bit of difficulty with it, more especially if it's your first time. I've also had before where I've overextended the CV axle and it got in a bind, and it was kind of a big headache, and I had to wind up taking more stuff off to get it to go. But if you're careful, you know, you can get it in here like this without having to remove a whole lot. So anyways, so we got it just setting there, and we're going to go ahead and get this one. I put some Loctite on this 17 millimeter, and I'm going to just tighten this one down to 55 foot-pounds, and then from here we're going to go ahead and move up top and get our bolts up there. Okay, so now we're just going ahead and torquing this here to 155 foot-pounds. And another thing, I probably mentioned this before, but when you're getting this tower to slide in there, make sure to use a pry bar to spread that collar out. That way it's going to go in there a lot easier for you, and then lubricate it. So go ahead and go up top now. Okay, and I just kind of left this collar sitting here, and like I said, I had a mark on it and a mark in there on that washer, you could see. And I guess I should have mentioned that before I slid the strut up in there. I made sure that mark was facing there and had it kind of spun around. That way I knew the bolt holes would line up. So I've got one started, and I'm just going to go ahead and get these other 14s in here, and then we'll go ahead and torque them down. And before I forget, make sure that you put some medium Loctite on these. Okay, now these here we're just tightening to 20 foot-pounds. That's what it calls for. And I mean, you see the little flimsy collar and plastic piece that they're going into, so you don't need to get carried away with it. Okay, and with this mounted, you can actually come up here and torque this thing, or you should be able to, and I'm going 45 foot-pounds on this. Okay, so now I've just come back down here and I'm setting my rotor on. We're going to go ahead and get this brake caliper set back on. And like I said, I'm using medium Loctite on everything. Okay, so I'm just getting my bolts into this bracket here, or the top and the bottom. Okay, so on these two, I'm going to go 85 foot-pounds for both of those. Okay, so we need to slip this back in. We just come underneath and just push it up. Now, sometimes with these aftermarkets, they don't want to fit, and you may have to take a file, a round file or something. And sometimes you don't have any trouble, sometimes you do. Okay, and then we're going to put our clip back. We just make sure that it goes up like that, and it can be pretty snug to get on there sometimes. Okay, and with that, we're just going to go ahead and we're going to turn our wheel back the other way and straighten it up, and we'll go ahead and get this end link replaced. It's going to go back over here. Okay, and again, like I did earlier, I just have positioned under here on the ball joint with my jack, and I'm going to jack this back up so we can slip that into there. Now, it's a big difference, you know, when you get these new struts on, because, you know, like with my old ones, I'll show you here in a minute. I mean, they basically had no pressure at all. They weren't doing anything. Okay, and you can see after we jack that up just a little bit, we're able to slip that in there, and we'll go ahead and put some medium Loctite on this as well, and we'll have to use our little Allen to hold that while we tighten it up. And we're going to go 45 foot-pounds on this. Now, you can get it tight, you know, by holding it with the Allen wrench, and once you get it good and snug, you should be able to go ahead and use your torque wrench without it spinning. Now, they do make a special tool, a little crow's foot you can put on your torque wrench, so it enables you to hold it in, torque it down, but usually by the time it's tight enough, you don't really need that. I don't have one. Okay, and this is a 5mm, and this is a 14 here, by the way. And sometimes you can just put, if you got a pneumatic, you can just spin them on there with that without it moving on you a whole lot as well. Okay, so we've just got on here and tightened that to the 45 foot-pounds just now. Didn't have any problem with it spinning. Okay, with that, we're ready to go ahead and get our wheel back on here, and we'll just take this thing and check it out. Okay, so everything seems to be doing a lot better with the struts on there on the front. If you like the video, it's helpful, just be sure to give it a like, and appreciate if you subscribe, and thank you for watching.